Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Awesome Walkers, where we have two special guests, Charlotte and Jonathan. They're renowned for their program called the Wellness Theory. Charlotte is an award winning stress relief and wellness specialist, bringing expertise in mental health and high performance. And Jonathan specializes in pain free health and embodies holistic practices. Co founders, they inspire lasting wellness and positive impact. Welcome to the show, Jonathan and Charlotte.
Thank you. It's been great to be here. Thank you for having us.
Good to see you, Samir.
Good to see you. Long time no see.
Exactly.
Wonderful. Uh, so, my first question to you is what does it feel like being you?
Great question,
Well,
Samir.
I haven't heard that one yet.
Well, I'll let you go first.
Yeah. Well, I think it's pretty awesome being us.
Our answer for you.
Well, very answer for us. For me, yeah, I'd say I love me. I love my life. Just the ability to be able to be kind of in a position to help people to kind of do what we do individually and together. It's just amazing. It just inspires us every day to be able to serve and give back. So having that opportunity is amazing.
I would add to that. I know Jonathan's kind of answering on behalf of both of us, but it's really important to us to make sure that any conversations like this that we're having are real and honest. And sometimes you can hear people talking about having, just living their amazing best life, but they don't always see the flip side. So what does it really feel like to be us or to be me, because I can only obviously speak in terms of myself, is that it's real, it's raw, it's, some days are amazing and some days are not, some days are a challenge, and that's completely okay too. And I think sometimes that answer isn't given enough, even though it's probably true for everyone. So I just thought I'd better throw that in there for anybody listening.
And what do you love about you being together in this as partners in life and the business?
It's funny, when people find out that we obviously have a business together, we work together, they go, how do you do it? Because those people would never consider working with their family, working with their loved ones. And we do it, it's just because we complement each other's strengths and weaknesses, and we both are good individually at what we do. We bring that together and it just creates something special. In terms of like what I enjoy, what I'm passionate about, and what Charlotte's passionate about, it just fits very well together. And we thought, I think after a few years of doing what we were doing, we realized, why aren't we just integrating our skill sets together to create something unique? We didn't even consider that thought, and then when we did, we go, okay, that makes sense. Actually, it makes sense. Like, you're good. You're really good at this. You're really good at this. Let's bring it together and create something spectacular. And that's what we did with Wellness Theory. And we work together because, like I say, I'm very quiet. I'm more quiet, very introverted, but very kind of practical, structured, and logical. And Charlotte's very creative, very talkative, very idealistic, futuristic as well. So both of what we do complement each other very well.
What was the moment where you realized this, that you complement each other, that you should do things together, that there is an opportunity over here for both of you to move forward in a direction which is professional?
The moment was 2018, I believe, and I was on a 10-day Vipassana silent meditation here in the UAE, and there was I went into that experience. For anybody who's obviously listening to this that doesn't know what that is, it's 10 days where you go and learn a modality of meditation, but it's complete silence, no distractions, no nothing. And we were both, before going on that, we were both doing our thing. So I was coaching, and Jonathan was looking more at the physical side of things with a fitness education business that he had here in the UAE. So we were both interested in the same kind of things, but going on that Vipassana, there was just these little aha moments, these these lessons of it's all connected, like everything is one. Why are we attacking things differently? Why are we teaching trainers essentially from a fitness standpoint about movement and pain relief that you were doing obviously as well, and like Olympic lifting and mindset and things like this, but we weren't integrating the emotion side, we weren't integrating the mental health side. Like it was all very separate. They would go and work with Jonathan for one thing, the other people will be working with me for another thing, and nothing works on its own. Like so, and this was just a realization that I got to experience very viscerally in the Vipassana experience that just made it just so real. And I remember coming back from that and saying to Jonathan, what do you think? And John was just like, whoa. Makes
pretty
sense.
much, yeah, because I was like, while I was teaching a lot of the rehabilitation courses in the Middle East, it kept coming up with the same question again and again. Why do people keep going around in the same circle of experiencing pain, feeling better, going back around experiencing pain again? And it took me a while to realize that, okay, so it's not the pain is not a physical issue. Most people, physical pain is a manifestation of what's going on mentally and emotionally. And when we start to connect those dots and realize, okay, this is why this industry is so basically just goes around and around in the same vicious cycle every single time, is because we're focusing so much on physical fixes. We're trying to change how we eat, we're trying to change how we move, we're trying to change how we sleep, but we're not focusing on the mental, how the emotional and the energetic side connects to the physical and vice versa. And when we start to connect those dots, we start to then see real change within clients, with the people we work with. And that's pretty much where it all kind of came from.
I see you both have different personalities. Are there moments of disagreement?
Oh, yes. Of course, all the time.
Yeah, there are.
Yes.
Yeah, there has to be, I think, in any healthy dynamic, whether that be in our marriage or whether that be in our work. I think it's healthy to have some level of disagreement, because it keeps things interesting.
Yes.
It keeps different opinions. It helps us to challenge the way each other thinks, and it helps us grow ultimately. So yeah, there's definitely disagreements.
You have to be, like, for me, I'm very good at figuring out things out and getting stuff done, but the creative side for me is not my strong point. So this is where Charlotte comes in with her strong point of thinking outside the box. So she's able to do that. I'm able to then, okay, let's see how we can actually get that done and make it work. And sometimes when she comes up with crazy ideas, and then I'm like, my logical mind is going, no, that's not going to work. So what's going on? And then is that back and forth argument before realizing, okay, let's give it a go.
It doesn't always end up with John just agreeing. No.
I love that. I just observed you said back and forth argument, and this happens in a lot of relationships as well, right? If you were to replace the word argument with something else, what would you replace it with?
Discussion. Yeah. Maybe I'll say a discussion more than argument. A passionate discussion.
I like that.
Personally, I would have gone for the word unpacking.
That is your buzzword, isn't it?
So it's really, it takes a lot to make a relationship work, and it takes a lot for, you guys work more on a personal level or at an organizational level? Where is your wellness theory position for?
Both. So we founded Wellness Theory off the back of working with a lot of individuals with different challenges. But one of the things we realized is with each individual, whether this was back when we was managing teams. So for example, Jonathan used to manage big teams within health clubs. I would manage teams across multiple health clubs in different countries. So we've both got a lot of experience managing people within organizations, but also working one-on-one. And one of the things that we realize is stress seems to be the thing that holds people back the most. And that can be obviously different because stress manifests differently for everyone. It can be mental, emotional, physical, spiritual even. But stress just seemed to be this one roadblock. And what we realized then when we focus more on the individual is that there was often something in their life, namely an organization that they were working for, their work life, their professional life, often there was something being instigated or not taken care of that was leading them to these extreme states of stress and burnout. So we started to branch out into the organizational structure and really stop companies to throw people in the river, basically, and they end up downstream with us. We wanted to go upstream and make sure that the companies have the resources that they need to be able to stop doing that for individuals. Now, that being said, it is absolutely critical for both individuals and organizations to look at it from both angles, because it's a shared responsibility from the two. So really we work with both, and we're both passionate about working with both the individual and groups. That ultimately it all comes down to very similar principles, which is that we all have certain things at a root level, whether that's an individual or an organization. We all have certain lifestyle habits, let's say, or lifestyle health things that we could work on, whether that's taking more breaks at work or whether that's looking after your sleep as an individual. And then we have our day-to-day life where we have the responsibilities of family, work, finances, fitness, all of these different areas as well.
And how do you help people deal with bad apples?
What do you mean bad apples?
Influences within organizations that actually, so if you keep a bad apple with good apples, the good apples also will turn bad, right?
Yeah.
And in an organization, when you have a bad apple, it can very quickly spread across and create stress in others as well. So if someone is going through stress, he might actually, and Jonathan, I don't mean this in a sexist way where only he does it. It could be it could be anyone who could be causing the stress.
Yeah, it's okay.
But
I would say the first thing that springs to mind is I don't believe there's such thing as a bad apple. I believe that we all experience struggles at different times, and yes, emotional contagion is real. It can, rub off on an organization and certain behaviors and thoughts and feelings and actions. It can obviously rub off, and that's a very real thing. So we have to acknowledge that is real. But if we're looking at it like that person is bad or that person is struggling because they're experiencing this thing, we're immediately looking at the wrong issue. We're putting the spotlight on that individual, whereas we should be putting that spotlight on what is happening. Let's understand what this individual is going through. Let's actually put our empathy hat on for a moment and actually look at why is this person showing up in this way? How can we help this individual? That is always the first starting point.
And you've got to think as well when you mentioned there about that kind of person affecting the people around them is in those people around them is helping them to understand and become more aware of why that individual, is having that empathy hat on as well, is not thinking, oh, this person is doing this because they're bad and they're trying to sabotage our department or our company or our job or whatever that is thinking that, okay, this person is very aggressive today, they're lashing out. Why? Let me try and understand why and how I can support them and help them. Because when we start to go down that perception of this person's acting like this, that means they're bad, we're affecting our own energy. So we're allowing that person's energy to affect ours. And it will come down to choice. We have a choice whether we allow someone's energy to affect ours or not. And the easiest way to stop that from happening is to gain that clarity of understanding of why this person is acting out, why they're acting the way they are. And we can only do that through understanding. And we have to understand this person and what they're going through. Otherwise, all we do is we perceive, this person's trying to sabotage us without even knowing anything about them or what they're going through, what's happening in their home life, what's happening in their personal life. It could be something that they might need support on, but they're just too scared to ask for.
Very true, right? And have you faced situations where people are very reluctant to open up about their personal life and journeys and struggles? They don't want to share it with their colleagues because they feel it might be a threat to their position. It might be a threat to their growth. It might be a threat to how other people perceive them. So they don't open up and they don't share. I mean, they don't do that. then all of what you're saying, which is trying to understand where the person is coming from, might fail because the other person who has to share is not sharing or not unpacking.
We have to we have to start to ask ourselves, why is this person not comfortable to share, right? And because it might not be an appropriate environment for them to share. I was somebody who was extremely closed off. When I was working for a company, the last thing I would do is go in and say, I'm really struggling with this thing at home, because the environment, it wasn't appropriate in that dynamic, in the relationships that were there, right? The leadership didn't encourage that. There was no, I didn't feel safe to do so. And that is the first port of call, is how do we help people feel like they can open up, or at least give them access to the resources they need. And it comes back to conversations. Like we were speaking about previously, Samir, is we have to start to ask ourselves, what is the conversation that I can have right now with this individual that might lead them towards a common outcome? Is it that I reflect back what I'm witnessing, right? So had perhaps one of my leaders in the past come and sat down with me and said, Charlotte, I noticed that you seem to be, you're not showing up to some of the team things that we are doing, or you seem to get maybe a bit irritated in this kind of situation. And they brought that to my attention and started to say, okay, how can we help you with that? How can, like, can you, what is going on there? Is there something that we need to be aware of that we can make sure is working for you? Or is there some support that we can give you that is independent from us? Right. So at least then they are reflecting back to me what they are seeing. And then it's up to me, isn't it, if I then continue on that path, or if I actually seek to change and seek to grow.
So when you have a heart-centered leader, I believe all those things, there is a possibility of going there, doing the right thing for the people, and putting a culture in place, especially when you have a structure like what you guys offer. But what if it is not there? What if the business owner or the leader of your department is someone who doesn't care? Then how does wellness theory go into the organization and work with the teams where there is a lot of resistance from the one who is leading
Yeah.
that department? He might not be at the organization level, he might be doing things right, but at the department level, this leader might be someone who just doesn't care for uh, anything but his results and his numbers, and he's focused on that. He's not coming from an emotional space because I'm guessing he has his own trauma and his own things to resolve and to address and work on, but he's not willing to do that. Then what happens?
Well, that's it. Well, you're talking about kind of middle management, right?
Yeah.
Because often, like, if the leadership at the top is good, often there is this beautiful ripple effect, right? Is that then that mid leadership is actually much more efficient, and they follow a similar suit. So in that scenario, they've got different role models, haven't they? In the example you've given. So I think it's really, really critical that we start to look at, okay, well, what drives this individual? Like, there's no problem if that person is focused on what they're doing and they're okay and they're happy. Just because they have their own style doesn't necessarily mean that it's a problem.
Very
Are
true.
you, in the example, are you suggesting that that person's burnt out, or what's the angle of the question?
The angle of the question is, how are you addressing when you go into organizations as wellness theory to deal with? Uh, so, what is the process that you go through when you go into organizations? Do you start with the top management and then you drill down, or do you work
So
across?
we don't look at it from the who we go to first. We look at it holistically. So everything that we do at Wellness Theory, whether it's individually or whether it is as an organisation, everything's holistic. So the first port of call is we make a full assessment from top down, down up. We go in, we'll have conversations with employees at varying levels. We will do surveys, we will look at data. From there, we can start to look at the needs of the company and the needs of the business. From there, what we can then look at the well-being of the organization as a whole, and then we can look at the wellness of each individual within that organism. From there, we're then able to prescribe some like a design of what that company might need. And that's when we then work with varying partners to deliver what it is they actually need. Because they might need the wellness piece, they might need some stress management and education around sleep. But usually there's a big corporate hygiene piece of the puzzle that is necessary. And that's a big part of what we look at. So as wellness theory, we go in and we look at what is going on at almost like the root level of an organization. Is there psychological safety? Do they have an ethical rewards and recognition system? Do they have people that care about mental health? What support do those people have? What are the vulnerable groups within an organization? So we start to look at that, and then we start to look at, okay, what is the data telling us? What is it that this company needs the most? Do they need somebody to come in and deliver a financial security workshop, or do they need somebody to come in and review their well-being review policies and review those? So that's what we actually do at Wellness Theories. We go in, look at things holistically, and then pinpoint with a laser focus, okay, this is something that is causing a big issue for you right now. How can we resolve this? And sometimes that is working then one-on-one with key individuals that really are struggling. But often we're looking at the big picture, and then we source exactly what a company needs.
I'm curious to know where you guys are coming from and how you started this whole, how you met each other first, and before that, what was like for you?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, life for me was pretty much a lot of suffering and a lot of pain. So I grew up in a household where I pretty much learned as a man, you're not supposed to show emotion. Like it's like you're a man, so that means you just get on with things, you do it, and you don't show, because anything apart from anger, sarcasm is weakness. So you're showing empathy, showing love, it's kind of weakness. You hold that in, you keep it down, you just crack on with things. And I took that into my work life with me. So I started my career in health and fitness at the age of 16. And I had no, shall I say, role models in the first part of my career where I thought, okay, I could do things differently. So I just kept going with that concept of I'm going to pretty much work, as I've been taught, I'm going to work 16, 17 hours a day. I'm going to work hard. I'm just going to keep pushing through. If it's not working, I'm going to work harder. If I don't agree with what people are saying, I'm just basically going to just ignore them and do things my way, because my way is the right way. And I went through that concept a lot until I went into management. And then when I went into management role of managing teams, the only way I knew how to do things was through anger and fear. So I would manage teams through sense of fear as, okay, this is how we're going to do it. If you don't do it right, I'm going to fire you type of mentality. I got, throughout the first stage of my career, I got the nickname from my colleagues as the Hulk, because I was constantly angry all the time. I would snap, like literally with the smallest of little things, and I would just lose it. And that's how I was for the first kind of half of my career, really. And because I didn't know any better, that's what I learned growing up. That's what I thought was, that's how you be a man, that's how you would run a team. I didn't realize at that time that the anger I was experiencing and I was holding on to was from a lot of unresolved emotions that I wasn't processing throughout my childhood and adulthood as well. And through that, I developed a lot of physical pain as part of that, especially chronic pain in my back, which got so severe to the point where I couldn't train, I couldn't sleep, I'd lose my vision. And that went on for about 4 years until I got so sick of being in pain and tired that I thought, okay, there has to be an easier way of doing this. I tried physio, I tried injections in my spine, I tried everything. Nothing was working until I got to a point where, okay, I've tried everything. What can I do now? That's when I started to become more open to the idea of the holistic approach. Because before then, anything that wasn't physical doesn't exist. Emotions, spirituality, all that type of stuff it's not real. So, because I got so sick of being in pain, I thought, okay, I've got to try something. And that's when I started getting into more meditation, breath work, trying different holistic ways of trying to relax and de-stress. And for me, breath work was a huge game changer. retraining my breath and helping to tap into my body. And I remember after 2 weeks of just regular daily breath work, is the chronic pain I had for 4 years in my back just disappeared completely. And that shocked me massively. That was like a light bulb switched on in my head. It was like, oh my God, okay, there is something to this. There's something to this. It's like to this holistic approach. And I started to learn more about why I was experiencing what I was experiencing. And I realized that the pain I was experiencing was from all these emotions I just locked down deep inside me that I hadn't dealt with, I hadn't resolved. And that was the kind of turning point for me, where I really switched everything from basic training and nutrition into being more mindful about movement, about breath work, about energy, and understanding that everything is connected. And I started to change my whole approach to how I approach clients when it comes to their results, when it comes to the physical stuff, and started to realize that the physical has a big attachment to how we think and how we feel. So for me, going through my own kind of pain and suffering helped me to realize that you can't focus on one thing. You can't focus on just eating well, or you can't focus on moving more. You have to change everything. You have to focus on a holistic approach.
You changed a lot as a leader as well, didn't you?
Yeah, exactly. The way I approached managing people as well, that empathy part, because I had no empathy. I didn't even know what the word meant.
You did not.
At all. You could ask anyone I work with. So I started to actually try to understand people. Why were they not doing their job? Why were they not doing this? Why were they not succeeding? It wasn't because they were lazy or they were stupid. It was because that I didn't understand what they needed as an employee. I didn't understand what they needed from a mental, emotional support standpoint. But when I started to realize that, I started to understand that, that's when everything started to click into place. And I started to realize, okay, there's a reason people act the way they do, they think the way they do what they do. It's not because they're not listening or because they're lazy, because there's something else going on deep inside. And that was a complete game changer for me, not just how I show up, but how I interact with other people as well.
What was that intervention that happened where you decided to explore holistic approaches?
I basically it was about 4 years into, I had chronic back pain, but so it was upper back into the back of my head, which would radiate, when it got really bad, it would radiate to basically to the front of my head, and I would get blurry vision. Literally would affect everything. After trying every physical fix I could think of, injections in my spine, physios, chiropractors, deep tissue mat, the whole lot, everything, nothing was working. And I just got so sick of being in pain. I got to a tipping point where I've had enough of being in pain. I just think there's got to be, I said, life. This is when I actually questioned. I said, life shouldn't feel this hard. It shouldn't feel this hard to work, to do. And I just got so sick of experiencing that level of pain and suffering that I just thought I had to try something different.
I remember that time he was also struggling to get the results you wanted, like with the team that he was working with as well. And that was another thing, wasn't it? It was almost like the straw that broke the camel's back was that, like, even like health is suffering, and now this on top is like a cherry on the cake.
I was training every day. I was eating healthy, or what I thought was healthy at the time, basically, because I've been a personal trainer since the age of 17. So I was doing everything I thought I was supposed to do. I was not feeling healthy. I was not feeling energized. I was not feeling fulfilled. None of that was happening, even though I was doing everything that I was told to do to get the results I was after. And I thought, okay, this is getting ridiculous now. It's been literally the first half of my career, 10 years in, 4 years of chronic pain, and I'm going, this isn't working. It's like something has to change now. I can't keep doing the same thing.
You remind me of SM Goenka's journey as well, right? When he discovered Vipassana, he was going through so much of pain, and then he started looking for the solution. And so my question was more about, was there a role model, or was there a person who guided and told you, go and try this or do this or experience this? Was there someone in your life that actually pointed you in the direction? And
that was Charlotte. So I was not in the mentality or the headspace to kind of take people's criticisms on board. I was like, if anyone criticized me, it was like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. I know what I'm talking about. Well, I'm right. So Charlotte kept basically started by buying me books.
Just to give some context, we weren't married at
No,
this point.
we weren't together or anything like that.
We were actually working together in kind of similar roles in a similar health club, both leading teams. And I was concerned, let's say, for the team and the way it was his team and the way it was being managed, because of seeing how the individuals were responding and seeing him suffering so much. Like it wasn't computing. It didn't add up in my mind. It's like something's not quite right. And you was very
resistant.
Resistant is definitely the word to use.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I remember basically there's a couple of books. I think the first couple of books I ever read when it came to any type of personal development was The Chimp Paradox and Robin Sharma's Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. Leadership Leader Without a Title. So those books, I thought, okay, I'll give them a read. And I read them. I found them very interesting. The story very relatable, especially the Leader Without a Title by Robin Sharma. And it started to make me think a bit differently, because the stories in the books was very similar to what I was going through in terms of the suffering I was causing myself, but I was blaming everyone and everything around me of why I wasn't getting what I wanted. And then I started to think, okay, there's got to be something to this. So let's just try something, because what I've been doing isn't working anymore. It hasn't been working. So I just started to implement a few strategies from what I was reading, and I started to see a quick result from myself and from the people I work with. And then that's when I started to think, okay, there's something to this. Let's lean in a little bit more. I was probably like 10% open at that time to change. And I started reading more. I started listening more, and then I think I went on a kind of like a 5-day like intense immersive experience course as part of Robin Sharma's group, and that just flipped everything on the head for me. It was like I remember when obviously we spoke before when you came obviously on our show about things feeling like your head was full of spaghetti, or you're trying to untangle all these things are meshed up, and that's what my head felt like at that time. Is I had no clarity, had no direction, and after this experience, everything became untangled, and everything just seemed to go in one direction and become very clear. And at that point of clarity was when everything I went from 10% open to 100%. And then after that, it was just everything just became constant development and learning how I can be a better version of myself, how I can show up more for the people around me. And that just keeps to this day of everything everything I try to do is ask myself is this aligned with who I am? Is it adding value to me or to the people around me? And that's all I try to think about now.
Before I go to Charlotte, one last one over here, just to connect to what you just said. How do you answer the question, is it aligned to who I am? How do you answer that question?
Based on how I feel. So first thing is you need to know who you are. So this question is, who am I? That took me a long time to...
So how do you answer that question? Who are you?
Who am I? Let's see, who am I? Well, I'm me. I'm someone who I'm here to serve. I'm here to help, to basically just help anyone, everything, become a better version of myself. Like one thing that came out of the Robin Sharma course that I did was I feel most genuine and authentic when I'm serving others. That makes me feel fulfilled, which I was missing in my life for a long time. So everything I do, so apart from that point, obviously then I started to figure out what I value the most, what values go along with who I am. And then when I ask that question is, okay, today I'm going to do this. Is this aligned with my values? Is this aligned with who I am? Is this going to take me in a direction I want to go? If it is, great, I'll do it. If it feels right, and that's what I try to base everything I do now is based on feeling. Does it feel right for me? Because logically it can make sense. but emotionally, it could be completely wrong for what I need. And that's what I try to go on is I try to take logic out of it as much as I can, which is hard for me because I'm a very structured, logical person. That's how I deal with things. And I try to go based on feeling. Does this feel right? Does what I'm about to do or what I want to do, does it serve me and the people around me? Does it make things better? If the answer is no, if the feeling doesn't feel right, feels no, even logically it says, yeah, you should do this, I won't do it. I'll then follow the feeling instead.
Beautiful. I just love what you said over there, especially about you leaning into something that that's unfamiliar for you. You're logical, you lean into the emotion part. And
Yes.
when we are emotional, I think we should lean into the logical part. And over here, you guys are leaning into each other constantly, which is helping you grow professionally, personally, etc. It's a beautiful way to actually uh, rise higher, where we lean into the emotion and the logical part accordingly. Charlotte,
Samir, tell me, what's the question? Would you just rip?
so tell me about your most memorable stress part of your childhood.
Of my childhood, wow. Okay. So in terms of childhood, my childhood was pretty turbulent. I was raised in a loving environment that was loving in its own unique way, and that came with all sorts of different challenges. And I guess the biggest stress for me that's appropriate for me to share now is the way I was able to kind of come through that turbulent time of having these moments of being able to witness, to choose, do I follow what I've witnessed growing up or do I choose a different path? And for me, I think what's a much more serving question is like, how did that come about in those challenging times? And it was really being able to be exposed to different things and different ways of doing things. I remember there was a time when I was about 13 years old, and I was out in the UK at the kind of local parks. They have like these charity runs, like a 5-kilometer cancer research fundraiser runs. I'd never seen anything like that. Now, at home, things were a bit dark. It was a bit challenging. Parents were struggling with different things, and that then whittled down to myself and my brother as well. And it was an escape for me is to get outside, basically. So I would go out and I would see something like this happening, and I was like, whoa, what is going on here? There was a lot of people being active, being healthy, and there was this like really interesting cocktail of emotion present as well, because these people were running and they were doing something that they were clearly enjoying, but they were doing it in honor of somebody they'd lost, right? There was a lot of grief and a lot of sadness, but there was so much love at the same time. And I'd never felt that and experienced that, and how this pain can be turned into something really, really special. And that for me, that was kind of it. I was like, wow, what is this thing? Like, this is clearly having this beautiful ripple effect in the world, because all of these people are loving what they're doing, even though there's this like almost essence of struggle. I'm like, this is a new thing. Like, how do I go in this direction? How do I adopt something like this into my life? And that was when I started to lean more into being active in sport and things like that. And then that led me to choosing what path I go on in terms of my profession, led me into that personal training space, similar to Jonathan. However, I then specialised in cardiac rehabilitation and prevention as well. So I would work with people who were struggling with stresses in their life, and I would be working with people who obviously have unfortunately experienced some of the extremes of heart attacks and strokes from living those kinds of lifestyle. And then I would help them bring that back on track. And from there, I then moved in towards that leadership within that fitness and wellness space, which then obviously led to what we do. And then I had my childhood stressors caught up with me as an adult in my early 20s. And that, I would say, was probably the most relevant stress, if you like, that I had any sense of control over. for want of a better term. And that for me was where I really started to spiral. A lot of unresolved emotions from the past, a lot of trauma from the past crept up on me. Whilst at the same time, I was leading teams and clearly like sharing books with Jonathan on certain things and things like that going on. And I was doing really well in my corporate fitness career. You know, I was being promoted often. On the outside, everything looked absolutely wonderful, but on the inside, I was really struggling. I was spiraling. My mental health was struggling. I was eating emotionally. I was wondering what is the point in all of it. I got to a point where I wanted to end it all, and it was at that point where, similar to Jonathan, I had this heavy wake up call of, okay, something's got to change. What is it? And at that point was I was doing the opposite to Jonathan. You know, I was actually not taking care of myself as much as I could be. And that was when I was like, okay, I need to go deeper on this. I need to understand. I am reaching out for help, whereas Jonathan was more internal and figure it out himself, reading books. I think because that resistance was there so much. I was more in this place of, I don't know what to do. I don't know what book to read. I don't know who to go to at this point. And it was at that point I reached out, fortunately, to a really lovely therapist that got me on the path. And that was it for me. That was when I started to then go deep and study and learn and for myself initially. And that was when I was like, okay, how do I give this back? How do I take this further? And that was really where my journey into this field came from.
Beautiful. And you both touched upon your childhood, you both touched upon your teenage years where it was a challenge. And teenagers today are going through so much of challenges. It's not always necessary that we have to go through burnout or go through our pains and struggles for us to choose what's right for us. Nevertheless, what happens is we end up sometimes as teenagers, they end up choosing things that's not serving them, not realizing. Uh, Anything that you want to, if you had to speak from a wellness perspective to youngsters today, to teenagers, what would be your message?
This is why we do what we do today and why we built the wellness theory, is to give access to the kind of information that was needed for us in those days. And I guess like the main message is that you don't have to go through anything on your own. You're in a beautiful time in history where you've got access to new understandings, different ways of thinking, and it's right there at your fingertips. If you feel that there is something that you're struggling with, is be curious. Just be curious, ask questions. And if it feels hard right now, just be curious inwardly. You know, you've got your phone. Clearly, if you're listening to this, you've got access to the internet. Google something that's touched a chord with you, even if it's a word that you're not sure of. Like you just mentioned burnout, Samir. You know, like look that up, see what it's like. Because if we don't deal with those things, that could be a trajectory that we end up on. And sometimes we always have to see the possibilities. So Google something like, what is life without burnout? What does that look like? You know, Google whatever thing is. If you're struggling to perhaps find what the thing is you think it is you might need, you just be curious. And that necessarily isn't Googling burnout. That was just an example, but it's being curious, I guess, is like the biggest message, because there's so many fantastic people out there creating a positive ripple effect in the world that are there for you. You know, our mission at Wellness Theory is to help people realize when they're healthy and well, they can be a force for good, right? But first, how do we be healthy and well? If somebody had taught me that as a teenager or even younger than that, I can't imagine how differently our lives could be.
I think, I think it's just so important, I think, to realize that whatever you're going through, I know obviously mental health and stuff like that is talked a lot more recently. But there's still a lot of stigma behind asking for help, especially for young people. Like for me, if I knew it was okay to be vulnerable and to show emotions and express myself when I was a teenager, I probably basically could have saved a lot of years of suffering. But that's what I learned growing up, because that was what my dad learned from his dad and vice versa. So I was being taught based on conditioning from previous years, but the information we know now wasn't readily available back in those days. So it's just getting people to understand, especially teenagers, is if you're struggling with anything, is ask for help. I said it's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength, because as human beings, we need community, we need support. We can't succeed on our own. No one can. You look at the most successful people in the world, they've all had a strong support system behind them to get to where they are. And we all need that. So no matter how low your things are for you, how bad things are going, always ask for help.
I think a lot of teenagers sometimes don't even realize that they have an issue. Uh, but parents recognize it, and parents don't reach out for help or don't do things because they see it as a sign of weakness, that
Yeah.
they didn't do their parenting job well, or they were not effective as the caregivers or caretakers of this child. So they hold themselves back sometimes in going out and taking the child to a therapist or a psychologist, or showing them up in, or even putting strong control systems at home in terms of how they do parenting. A lot of times, maybe all they're doing is the logical one, not the emotional one. They, as parents, they don't go lean in into both sides of how you deal with situations. So, for parents, what would you say, especially in terms of educating themselves around being better parents, or it's not just a matter of being a better parent, but being a better individual who shows up in the world, whether it is to take care of the children or their colleagues or the community. How important is this, and how do they, where do they start?
So just to be completely transparent, we're not parents. We've had parents, and we work with parents, but we're not parents. So this is obviously coming from what we've experienced and what we've witnessed, and the kind of people that we've worked with. So I honestly think the first point is really truly accepting that you're already doing the best that you can with what you have, and that is already more than enough. And coming from somebody, and again, I can only speak for myself personally, that experienced some difficult times, predominantly as well, instigated by parents as well, and but it's something that I love them to bits. Like, I wouldn't wish it to be any different, only that perhaps they didn't suffer as much, and I think sometimes there's a lot of guilt with parenting. I was speaking to a client only earlier this week. There's a guilt that they could have done better, they should do better, and it's heavy. It's a heavy thing to carry around. And then there's often a layer of shame that comes with that as well, which is not only you feel guilty, but now you're ashamed to be able to perhaps suggest something new, or to be able to really step into your own confidence maybe as a parent. And I think that's always the first place I would, if obviously the parent is resonating with that, is I would look there before it's giving any tips or advice. It's like, hey, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Like, what's really going on with you? What's raw? What's real? What's life like being you right now? And let's really just unpack it, to use your word there, Sam. Let's unpack that and really actually just look at what is there, because often we have that negative bias and we only see the things that we're not doing or the bad things, when actually there's so much good there. And sometimes that is too easy to get overlooked. And similar to a conversation we had with you, obviously on our podcast, Samir, is there's positive evidence, right? There's evidence to show that you're already on the right path. You're already doing so many things fantastically well. What momentum can we start to build when we start to free ourselves of perhaps some of that shame and that guilt and any other emotion that perhaps might be holding us back? Because it's natural to feel those things. We just don't want to hang on to them. Like, how do we then build momentum from there? And what's that natural next step that feels like it makes sense for you? Because, to give you an example, a friend and colleague, just amazing human that I have in my life, she's a parent of 2 teens, and the thing that felt right for her was to step back from actually what she was doing professionally, just for a short while, to be able to recenter herself and come back to what's authentic to her, to come back to alignment. And now she's moving in a way in the world that is so much more confident, light-hearted. Her kids are seeing it, they're adopting it, and now she's finding her way in the world. Now she's had that little pause, and now that's adding even more value to her professional life as well. So sometimes we just need to take that pause and realign and just look at things the way they are, rather than where it is we should be.
Yeah. The word that was screaming in my head when you're giving that entire answer was scorecard, 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 take the assessment, because everything that you said, you have captured that free tool that you give on your website. I love the starting point that you gave for your answer, which is you're doing all you're doing is right from where you know and what you know until this point of time. Uh, so it's about educating yourself and seeing where the gaps are before you can do anything, and to be open to the whole idea of self exploration. I think that is a key word over here for us to go a little deeper in terms of our parenting, in terms of our leadership, in terms of our empathy towards others. It's identifying where we are coming from. I would love for you to share a little bit about this interesting tool that you have, which I took, and I was really amazed by the suggestions that it gives on the website immediately after you take the test. And how did you come up with this scorecard report in the first place? And can you unpack that a little bit for
Yeah.
the
So
listeners?
the one thing we're obviously a big believer and advocate of is the more aware people become, the easier it is for them to make changes. So when you don't know what you don't know, it becomes hard to actually seek help, ask for help. And this is kind of where the scorecard comes in. It's a starting point for people to become aware of where they're facing stresses within their life, whether it is at the life level, the health level, the root level, where is that starting point for them? Where's the lowest hanging basically fruit that they can get the biggest return of investment from to start with? So like you've got so many aspects of wellness. We've got our mental, our physical, actually spiritual health, our mental health. You've got food, you've got training, you've got sleep, you've got all these different things, and it can become overwhelming. But we don't have to do everything at once. So this assessment tool can help people to, a starting point is, okay, maybe my sleep is where I need this is my starting point, because your sleep affects everything. So if I improve my sleep, I can help have a ripple effect on the other areas of my life. Or it could be my mental health, my quality of thinking. So all these things can help to basically just start to create that ripple effect to help ease the stresses that people are going through. And when that happens, people are more in tune to start reaching out for help. Because when we're in that stress state, we're experiencing it, we can't see the solution. So a tool like this helps people to start to see that solution there.
So the actual the scorecard itself, obviously you fill up like 24 questions, I believe it is. It takes less than 2 minutes to do, and you'll get a score at the end of it for your day-to-day stress, how stress is showing up in your body essentially, and then what is going on at that root layer of like the deeper versions of who we are, what's actually driving all of these things at the day-to-day level and our health as well. So it starts to just show you and introduce you to different ways of being able to think about what you're experiencing as well. Because again, when we're in a high stress situation, or we're feeling very low in energy or disengaged perhaps, and we're not feeling well, it's easy to stay in the feeling. Sometimes it's hard to articulate what we're going through. So when we can break it down into those 3 different levels, we can start to see, like Jonathan said, that low-hanging fruit. So what's the easy win for me? Am I ready to look at unresolved emotions? Do I need to look at my belief system? That might be way too far for somebody. It could be that they need to perhaps drink some more water and just get their energy up a little bit, and then they've got some energy to now go take care of their kids in the way that they want, or to not snap at their husband if they're not eating right and things like that. So really the scorecard is designed to meet people where they are and then help them take the next step, whatever that step looks like for them. Because for some people, acute stress, for everybody actually, acute stress is actually a very healthy thing. We need it to help us grow. It's okay to experience it. It's very natural. But sometimes we just need to find a way to make sure it's not chronic. So we need to see, what is that one thing that I can do that just brings me back to being resourceful? And sometimes we just need those top 5 tips. Sometimes we just need that reminder, oh yeah, maybe I should not play with my phone as I put my head on the pillow to go to sleep. Sometimes we need that layer of recommendation, but sometimes we need to go deeper, and we need to ask ourselves, why am I thinking about changing my job for the 10th time in the last 12 months? is there something deeper going on here? What's driving this behavior? What else could I be looking at? And that's where the scorecard and the report that you actually receive after doing that scorecard will help you to unpack that more efficiently. You'll start to see all the different elements of what could be going on with you. And then whoever's taking the scorecard can then just look at, okay, what resonates with me the most? Where do I start?
So where do I start? I give you my scores and you just tell me on a surface level if you would like to. My life score is 85, my health is 63, and my root is 48, which
Okay.
means my root is moderate stress, moderate stress, low stress on life.
So what
So
I
how
would do is I would look at the specifics actually of the questions you've answered. I don't have them in front of me, but I look at the individual questions. So if we was on a call right now, I would look at the individual questions that you've answered within those areas that you scored perhaps a little bit lower in that show a bit more stress. So I would actually start to look at those lower areas that you feel perhaps are your biggest challenges right now. So, I mean, Samir, if you're happy for me to ask you, I'd love to know, like, how do you feel about the results that you're seeing when you look particularly at that health and root level? Because I believe that's what you said was perhaps on the lower side.
uh, so my sleep is not regulated enough. This is something that I'm kind of working towards. There are certain situations where emotion states, there are, it says over here, the root level, taking a closer look at unresolved negative emotions, belief systems, sense of identity, core values, inner child integration. Perhaps there are work that needs to be done over there. There are things that, uh, the areas that needs to be unpacked for myself in terms of I'm focused so much on the forward journey. I'm focused so much on where I'm heading and what I'm doing and being present in this moment. That there are certain things at the back that I have decided to let go. And maybe what's showing up for me is maybe I have not let go of it completely. Maybe I'm thinking I have let go, but it's there somewhere deep down, remaining unresolved. That's what's
Perhaps, and
my.
that's yeah, and that's really for you to see if that does that resonate with you. Do you feel that that's the case, Samir?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's then well worth exploring, isn't it? And because it's very easy for us to get, like you said, focused on where it is I'm going. But if something that's kind of deep within us is actually influencing the trajectory of where we're going, perhaps one day you end up where it is you're aiming for, and actually it came from the wrong place. We put the wrong coordinates in the very beginning, and then we end up years later potentially, and I'm not saying this is you, Samir, I'm just giving this an example for anybody else listening, is we can end up somewhere and be like, how did I get here? And actually it could be because we're running on some fear from the past that perhaps isn't serving us anymore, or perhaps we are believing something about ourselves that we need to aim for this thing out there in the future to make us feel like we're good enough. But actually you can feel more than enough now. Would that change your trajectory? I don't know, only you would know the answer to that. But we start to pose these questions at that root level just to really make sure that perhaps this energy that you've got, which is fantastic, that's driving you towards where you're going, is coming from a deeply authentic place. And you feel so congruent in what it is you do, and you're emotionally charged in the most resourceful ways that take you there.
Yeah. And I believe myself, and perhaps for a lot of listeners also here, you might know where you're coming from, but you're probably not made peace with it. You're probably not completely accepted it from a deep emotional level. And maybe that requires facilitation, or that requires you taking the support of somebody else who might guide you through that process.
Correct.
Uh,
And that's exactly where we come in, is that's what we do. When we're coaching individuals, we're helping them navigate all of those levels. So sometimes people come to us because they feel like there is no fulfillment. They'll come to us because maybe they feel like they're not quite sure where they're going and they don't know why they're feeling the way they are. Sometimes they come to us because they can't stick to a healthy habit. So you mentioned there, for example, sleep is perhaps an opportunity for you, is that it's people come to us because they're frustrated because they can't sleep at night. They're trying to implement these habits, and for whatever reason, they've got no discipline or self-control, or they don't feel perhaps like they've got enough juice in the tank to really follow through on that decision to make their sleep better. So therefore, that's then having an effect on how quickly they recover, how well their mood is when they get to work, how short they are with their family. And then sleep is now not just about regulating sleep. Sleep is now actually affecting everything. What is going on behind the scenes there that is causing you to not put in these healthy, hygienic, like practical things on a daily basis? Because often, I think you said it earlier, Samir, beautifully, is there's so many people out there that want to just give us advice. You know, go on social media now, it's like, do these top 10 things and life will be wonderful. And actually, perhaps you've tried all those things or you can't stick to all of those things. That's a sign and a signal to say there's something going on at that root level. There's something here that maybe you're believing about yourself, something that perhaps isn't aligned to what's most important to you, something that maybe you're afraid of, something that you don't even know about yet, that is actually preventing you to switch your phone off before you go to bed, or to go to bed an hour earlier, or to wake up an hour later. You know, there's so many ways to look at all these different elements, and that's where the scorecard helps to be able to identify that for individuals and help them go through that.
I love how you put that answer, and I just realized how common what you do and what I do is, you know, we are not here to tell people what to do. We are facilitators, and wellness is wellness and living a stress-free life. The answers to that is not outside you, it is within you, and it is about accessing that, and it's about going to the root of everything who you are, and operating from that space, which is where the magic lies, right? Where it's about tapping into that and opening that door. I say it's like opening the third eye and opening that, or the container within, or a door inside your mind, which actually creates the opportunity to receive more. I think Jonathan said he was open to receiving because he had tried everything else. He had like 10 doors open, and then there was 11th one, and he was like, should I open it? And then, okay, when he opened it, it was like a floodgate, and then and transformation happened over there. So if anyone out there listening is thinking, I've tried everything, there's perhaps one more door to open, that would be the magic. There's always stress, I say, is saying the same thing or doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, or thinking that I have the solutions, right?
Yeah.
So it's about opening that door, and I see you both do it beautifully. Yes, you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, it's
No, just I think it's just so important for people to realize that we're never going to be stress free. What we can do is we can eliminate unhealthy stress, and we can leverage healthy stress. That helps us to become a better version of ourselves. And I think it's just, again, it's that identifying of which one you're experiencing, because we need it. We need stress. It's good for us. But we don't need the unhealthy stuff. We don't need to latch onto it and keep it and hold on to it for years on end, where it becomes chronic. So there's always a solution, and stress can actually help you find the solution to what you're going through. But you have to be aware and attuned and listen to what's going on, not just within your body, but in your life and around you. So are you achieving what you want to achieve? Are you going in the direction you want to go in? If not, time to take a step back, take a breath, realign, and then choose what you want. Choose the type of stress you want to experience.
I have one question for both of you. I don't know if you're both going to answer it the same way, but what is your definition of the word stress?
Anything that triggers our nervous system, basically. That's how I would describe stress. It's anything that triggers us, right? Whether that be for good or for bad, ultimately.
Yeah, it's basically what it is stress is just a triggers your nervous system into the sympathetic response of fight, flight, or freeze. It helps you become more focused, more attuned, but at the same time it can paralyze you if you are not aware of it and don't know how to utilize it. Because that is when you're going to talk on stage, for example, that's stress. But some people get really scared and like they get paralyzed on it, and the stress goes into fear, and that fear paralyzes them. So it's very important for people to learn how to walk that fine line between healthy stress and unhealthy stress.
It's a signal.
So, yeah,
Stress
that's
is
all it is. It's a signal. Everything that happens within your physical body, everything that happens is a signal from your nervous system to let you know how it's functioning. If you're in pain, that's a signal that there's a lot of unhealthy stress happening within your body right now. So it's important to listen to what's happening.
And it's the way you respond to that trigger or stress.
Your perception of what's going on in that situation, how you respond, it's just so important. And like we said earlier, is you could be surrounded by people who are telling you how rubbish you are at things, but you have a choice whether to believe that, or you have a choice whether to understand that they're not saying that out of malice, and that's just who they're being, and they're being who they are based on how they've been brought up and the information they've received. They're doing the best they can with what they have. So our job is not to let that affect us, but to be able to then put our energy out and help people to become better versions of themselves.
Yeah, I always say this when people say that you can't do something, what they are actually saying is that they wouldn't do it.
Exactly,
Yeah.
they would. Exactly. It's nothing to do with you. It's all to do with them.
Yeah, and go ahead.
I was just going to say that, and that's the thing with stress, isn't it? Is it like often everybody has their own definition of stress and what that actually means to them. And I think often that is attached to story. That's why our answer to you was so logical. It's a signal and it's attached to our nervous system. And because like stress isn't a story that we're telling ourselves that we're stressed at work, that becomes a story you're telling yourself. What's really going on is there's something going on within you right now that you're perceiving that is influencing you. The fact that work is stressing you out is the story you're attaching to the experience that you're having. So that perception of it is king. That's going to be the difference between it becoming healthy or unhealthy.
Yeah, and for listeners in general, when you talk about stress, always the connotation that you have is it is negative. It is not good. It is not something that you want to have in your life. And what you just now shared is it's not. It's just a trigger, and we have to just look at it as a trigger, and that's all. It's just a signal.
Yeah, exactly. It's like getting a notification on your phone. That's all it is. You just need to check in with that notification. What does it mean? What does it say?
Because if we have something that we call stress stacking, if we don't answer those notifications of stress, it stacks up. Right, and it stacks up inside of our body, inside of our mind, inside of our hearts. And when it stacks up, we get to a point where we have these stress explosions. Right, we have an outburst, or we say something that we didn't mean to say, or we end up just responding or reacting usually to something that isn't as resourceful as what we would like. That is often a clear sign that the stress is stacked up. Right, but what we want to do is make sure that we're clearing off those notifications, we're closing those tabs, we're taking away the acute stuff. You know, when a great example of this is road rage. When people get upset and they get stressed out in on the road, is often it's acute because there's a moment of fear. It's instinctual, it's survival. We're scared that something's going to happen to us or somebody else, which is completely okay that fear would show up if you're in a near miss, for example. However, there are some people that they take that road rage and every time it gets worse and worse and worse. You know, there's stories of people chasing people down the road and, you know, there being like violent altercations because somebody cut somebody up on the road. That is a lot of stress stacking. You know, it should be fleeting. Our emotions should come and they should go. We shouldn't be holding on to it so much that it starts to influence our lives in such a negative way. And that's where if we listen to it the first time and we're like, oh, okay, yeah, I was scared, something could have happened to me just now, but actually I'm okay, I'm safe. Immediately that stress is a good thing. It keeps us cautious next time we're driving our car. It keeps us on our toes, it keeps us alert, and that's okay. But we don't hold on to it and then do something crazy with that stress, you know. So it really does come back to just that whole notion of being aware, letting us know that actually stress is okay. It's a very natural feeling. You don't want to just eradicate it forever. You want to relieve it. You want to let it go. You want to let it pass. It's when we hold on to it that it becomes a problem.
We could go on. We just had two back-to-back conversations, and still we have so much to, like I say, unpack or just learn from each other. There's so much of wisdom in what both of you share. Uh, and I was just reflecting on what you're sharing over here. Even the score assessment card, I was realizing at this point of time, you can take this multiple times. You can take this every week and just see where you are standing today, where you are standing 2 weeks from today. And if you are evolving and if you are growing, this is a constant check-in that you can do for yourself. You don't have to involve anybody, and you can still be on a growth journey with the wellness theory. I love what you guys are doing. It's amazing, and I love the structure that you have put to your entire business. How you are showing up in the world. Before we uh, wind this, we're coming to time fly. Yeah. Any closing remarks? Anything where they can find you, and any additional thing that you would want to share with the audience, listeners?
Well, I think we've covered off a lot of the kind of key things around stress, I think, here. And I think it's just really important to remember that no matter what you're experiencing, whether that be at an individual level or an organizational level, there is always a root. There's always something happening, usually quite systematic within us or within an organization, that if we can just shine a spotlight on it and it's appropriate to, then that's where lasting change can be created. And that's where everything can start to shift in a way that can create a lot of ease and grace in life. And often that's the thing that we're really moving towards, rather than happy and just everything being sunshines and rainbows. No, would you want perhaps a bit more peace? It always is lying somewhere within that root cause. And if you take that courage to just lean into those things that you're trying to spotlight on, then that's where the magic happens, and that's when you really get to shift gears into a place that's really enjoyable. And just on the scorecard point,
so off the back of the scorecard, once someone's completed it, they not only get the report, but we also get access to a masterclass where we go a bit deeper into the different layers of stress as well. So if anyone wants to really understand that, then that's there for them as well. And the best place to find us is on our website, thewellnesstheory.com, where they can find the link to that scorecard as well.
Yeah, and that's all completely free. We've got loads of free resources for anybody listening as well, over on YouTube, on the website, our podcast as well. So just thewellnesstheory.com, you'll find whatever you need.
Wonderful, guys. I wish you the very best. I hope Dubai, UAE, the world all grow in their wellness and journey by the impact that you guys are making. Thank you very much. I look forward to having more conversations with you and seeing where this all leads to. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Samir.
Ciao. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.